So in many ways, killer whales are pretty terrifying animals. They are one of the fastest sea creatures. They're one of the fastest sea creatures, capable of speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. They also have a bite that's 5 times more powerful than a great white shark's. And to make it more terrifying, they live in pods. They live in a group of killer whales, and they all coordinate very effectively to kill animals, sometimes much larger than themselves, right? They can kill whales that are much bigger than an individual orca. They can even kill great white sharks. The orcas will kill great white sharks and then eat their livers. The orcas will eat the livers of the great white sharks. Sometimes people will be like walking on the beach and they'll find like this dead great white shark that's washed up on the beach, but its liver's been missing. So I'll be like, oh, the orca's got that one. Pretty scary. They're also smart, like probably one of the smartest animals, and they seem to be able to recognize themselves in a mirror as opposed to just thinking that it's like some other member of their species. You know, like like if you put a mirror in front of a dog, the dog will just be confused and think that's another dog. And it's supposed to be a sign of intelligence. I mean, the test is sort of criticized. But in addition to that, pods of orcas have their own like calls, and I even heard it described as pods of orcas have their own languages that are distinct from other pods of orcas, and even their own cultures. Pods of orcas have their own like cultures. Very interesting. Obviously, very intelligent animals. It's pretty clear that if they wanted to, they could make the ocean a pretty difficult thing to go into for humans, don't you think? But they choose not to, typically, which leads us to our first story, our main story of this week's Weird News Report. And that is the fact that orcas off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula are sinking ships, are attacking. They're attacking boats, typically small boats like sailboats and some types of small yachts. The orcas are attacking the small boats, tearing off their rudders, and in some instances, sinking ships. Yeah, one instance, on the night of May 4th, 2023, in the Strait of Gibraltar off the coast of Spain, there was a ship whose skipper was named Werner Schaffelberger. Sorry. And he said, quote, "There were 2 smaller and 1 larger orca. The little ones shook the rudder at the back while the big one repeatedly backed up and rammed the ship with full force from the side. The 2 little orcas observed the bigger one's technique, and with a slight run-up, they too slammed into the boat." The orcas are teaching each other how to sink ships, which is bad, but also kind of funny. And just 2 days earlier, a pod of 6 orcas had attacked another sailboat that was navigating in the same region. This is a quote from Greg Blackburn, who was on that ship. He noticed what looked like a mother orca was teaching her calf how to charge into the rudder of the ship. He said, quote, "It was definitely some form of education, teaching it going on. They're learning. They're smart animals." Yeah, these sort of encounters with orcas, these aggressive encounters with orcas started way back in 2020 and have been continuing to this day. Yeah, so this trend of aggressive orca encounters started way back in 2020. And it seems to mostly consist of orcas approaching the stern of ships to strike the rudder of the ship, and then losing interest as soon as they have successfully, stopped the boat. A biologist named Alfredo Lopez Fernandez said, quote, "In more than 500 interaction events recorded since 2020, there are 3 sunken ships. We estimate that killer whales only touch 1 ship out of every 100 that sail through a location." That's not that reassuring. I thought it would be way lower. 1 in 100. There's a 1% chance that if you sail a sailboat through the Strait of Gibraltar, that an orca will try to sink your ship. No. I think they're trying to just tear off the rudder of your ship, but that still sucks. So why are the killer whales doing it? Why are the killer whales picking now of all times to seek their revenge? There are a few theories. I think the predominant one seems to be that experts think that there might have been an injury with a particular individual named White Gladys. White Gladys might have suffered some sort of injury, like a collision with the boat, or maybe some sort of entrapment during or in fishing equipment. And all of a sudden, White Gladys was traumatized, right? And that's when she decided to get her revenge. And obviously, White Gladys is a very popular orca because many other orcas have been also attacking boats. When you mess with White Gladys, you mess with the whole orca pod. Have I mentioned that this is like not that many orcas doing it? It's like, I think it's, I read the number somewhere. It's like less than 50 orcas that are responsible for all of these attacks. Less than 50 orcas are responsible for more than 500 interactions in the past 2 years. That is insane. Although I think like an interaction can include just an orca swimming up to a boat just to investigate and not necessarily tearing off the rudder. But still, that seems like a lot. Another idea is that this behavior could be sort of playful, or what researchers call a fad, where a behavior initiated by one or two orcas will get copied by other orcas for temporarily before it gets abandoned a little while later. Yeah, orcas, I guess, are just, curious and playful animals. So these types of fads are pretty common. So I'll just say this. Orcas sinking ships overall is a bad thing, right? Because it poses sort of a danger to humans, probably also a danger to the orcas, right? They could probably also get injured. And also it's a shame to, lose your boat. So overall, this is a bad thing. I want to make that very clear that that's my opinion. However, the idea that orcas are sinking ships just for fun is kind of hilarious. Like they're just doing it just to be jerks. Just because they think it's fun. I don't know. I find that kind of amusing and sort of a, dark sort of way. Oh, I see here. There are, in the last census in 2011, they recorded 39 Iberian orcas. So these Iberian orcas these 39, give or take, orcas are what are responsible for basically all of these attacks, which is pretty impressive. Very busy orcas. It's kind of funny too, because the orcas are a protected species, so the sailors can't even fight back. They just have to take it. There was another theory that I saw that was that I liked. I read somewhere that there's a theory that maybe the orcas like the bubbles that are created by propellers. So when propellers aren't turned on and when they're not getting the nice bubbles on their face, they get frustrated. They get so frustrated that they end up tearing the rudders off of ships. And then in some instances sinking ships, which is not funny. I mean, it's a little bit funny, but you have to think about the danger to the orcas, to the humans, to the boats. Right now, this is just a small trend. This is just a small trend of a small subpopulation of orcas. But if you look at the distribution of orcas, orcas live in almost every part of the ocean. They just live. They don't live in like the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea, but they live in almost every other part of the sea. And there's like 50,000 orcas that are alive right now. If they wanted to, if all of the orcas teamed up, it would be probably a pretty big deal. It would make going into the ocean pretty uncomfortable, I think. This next story is about AI, more specifically Chat GPT. There was a lawyer, a New York lawyer, who was facing a trial of his own after his firm used Chat GPT for legal research and submitted a brief to a judge that contained several references to cases which did not exist. ChatGPT had just made them all up. Many of you probably know that ChatGPT very often could just make stuff up, could just lie, which makes it not a very reliable source. Apparently, the lawyer that wrote the brief didn't know that. Well, there were two lawyers that were working on this case, so I guess neither of them knew that ChatGPT is not that reliable. Which is so weird that you always hear. This is like my, I've read stories like this quite a few times where it's like people like don't understand that ChatGPT can like make up answers. But if you like go to ChatGPT, like there's a warning on the like front page that says like sometimes ChatGPT can create inaccurate information. It's like a warning right at the beginning. I guess people don't read those. But yeah, now these two lawyers that were involved in this case have to go to a hearing of their own about why they shouldn't be disciplined for using a brief with non-existent court cases. It sucks for those guys. Use AI responsibly, guys. That's all I have to say about that. This is going to be a recurring sort of story, I think, on this sort of series, is people misusing AI. This next story is about a nun who died in 2019 named Sister Wilhelmina, something like that. Sister Wilhelmina Lancaster. She was buried in 2019, but just this last April, she was exhumed, and they found that her body hadn't decayed in 4 years. The word got out and people went crazy. And I guess she lived in the middle of nowhere because people were flocking from all over the continent to this tiny town of 1,800 people. And they didn't have like the infrastructure to handle the amount of people coming to this, to visit this nun's body. At first, it says that visitors were allowed to touch her. Doesn't seem sanitary. But the nuns, I guess it says in this article that they wanted to make her accessible to the public because in real life, she was always accessible to people. I don't know if that should mean that people are allowed to touch her dead body, but they said later that they put her body in a glass case, and that people would just be able to see her body and would be able to take dirt from her grave, if that's what they're into. What would you even do with holy dirt? Would you keep it, or would you like spread it over your garden? That can't be right. I don't mean to be insensitive, but it's a little bit funny. Obviously, uncorruptibility is can be seen as like a holy thing. Like this can be seen as like divine intervention by some. This is why there's such a big deal. They were looking into, there are some people raising the question if this would mean that she would become a saint, but apparently you can't become a saint until 5 years after you die, which I think is weird. Like, if you could imagine like a woman, if you can imagine a nun that literally like cured blind children with just her touch, and then she died, would the church be like, yeah, we have to wait 5 years before declaring her a saint? But later in the article, the article has an interview with an anthropologist from the University of North Carolina. And the anthropologist said that the mummification of unembalmed bodies is actually quite common at the university's faculty, and that the bodies could stay preserved for many years if allowed to. Coffins and clothing can also help to preserve bodies, she said. Typically, when we bury people, we don't exhume them. We don't get to look at people. We don't get to look at them a couple years out. With 100 years, there might be nothing left. But when you just got a few years out, this is not unexpected. Okay, so the whole thing's pointless. Probably. I like that this article waited until the end just to like drop that sort of bombshell on us. Also, if you like look at the picture, if you look at this nun's like hands, I mean, her hands look like they've decayed. Like her hands are just like shriveled up little. I mean, I don't mean to make fun of this nun, this poor nun who died 4 years ago, but it is just an interesting story, I think. The other thing I was wondering is like, how often do people become saints these days even? Like, it seems like it's only people that, super far back that become saints, but I was wrong. That was a misconception I had. Pope Francis, since becoming Pope in 2013, had canonized 911 saints in just the past 10 years. That's what is that? 100 saints, almost 100 saints a year. I mean, pretty impressive. There was a man in South Korea on a plane. Never a good start to a weird news story. He was on an Asiana, I don't know how to pronounce that, Asiana Airlines flight. And the flight was about 200 meters above ground. When he panicked, he tried opening the plane door, saying he wanted out quickly. I mean, yeah, I would assume so if you're trying to open the plane door. But the thing is, normally when people try to open plane doors, they're at a very high altitude. And, plane doors can only open inwards. So the pressure inside of the cabin compared to the low pressure outside of the plane, the air on the inside is pushing on the door very hard, comparative to the lack of pressure outside of the plane. So in order to open the door at like a very high pressure, you would have to fight this very strong force that's like holding the door closed. And it would basically be impossible for one person to open the plane door by themselves. But this flight was only 200 meters above the ground when this man tried to open the plane door. So he was actually able to open it. He was restrained by other passengers, so he didn't get sucked out of the flight, I guess, which I guess is good. And no one no one was killed. There was a dozen people that had to be taken to the hospital. I don't know why people do this. Why people like panic on airplanes and need to open up a plane door, because that's like 10 years in prison, or a very long punishment, right? At the very least, you wouldn't be able to fly again, I don't think. Yeah, my parents were talking about this story like a week ago at dinner, and they're like, and I think it was my dad that was saying like, "Oh, I'm not going to fly on any South Korean airlines," knowing this story, which I don't know how that makes sense, because this happens on every airline. But okay, sure. You think that couldn't plane doors have like a lock, some sort of lock? Maybe that's like a fire hazard, like if the plane crashes, so that if there was a lock, it'd be harder to get out of the plane. I don't know. Very interesting. Let's move on to our next story. Next story is about the Peruvian anti-drug police. Hard-working fellas, probably. They seized 58 1-kilogram packages of cocaine. How do I say this in a way that's YouTube friendly? They all had pictures on the outside of the package of the swastika from the Nazis. Maybe YouTube won't recognize the words I'm saying if I say them real weird. So it says last month, so that probably would have been April, because I'm so slow to the news these days. It's fine. It says that a few months ago, there were packages of cocaine that were worth more than $100,000 that had washed up on Florida beaches. One of which was wrapped in packaging that appeared to mimic the Chanel logo, like the beauty brand. Who is this like appealing to? Cocaine with the Chanel logo on it. Other instances, there was cocaine that was seized by police in Italy that were decorated with images of notorious mafia leaders. Scary. I also heard that there have been cocaine like packaged in logos like the YouTube logo, and just random weird brands. Like, I don't know why. You think that if you were trying to like discreetly, ship some cocaine, that you would try to like not put such a like startling image on the outside. Like if you just happen to glance it and see a swastika, you might double check, if you hadn't paid close attention. And then you just be like, oh crap, that's cocaine. Did I say that the cocaine was also stamped with like Hitler's name? It had like a impression of Hitler's name inside the actual block of cocaine. Who is this applying to? I think it was being shipped to somewhere in Europe, like the Netherlands or something. You know how those Nazis love their cocaine. Actually, that's kind of true, because I know Hitler was actually pretty addicted to drugs. And I think I even heard that some of his like strategic blunders in World War II might be attributed to the fact that he was like high on drugs all the time. What an idiot. All right, let's move on to the next story, which is about Neuralink. Have you heard about this? The brain chip company run by Elon Musk, a very smart man, I'm told, heading forward with human trials, or at least they've gotten FDA approval of in-human clinical study. Right now, I think they're working on brain chips to help people with diseases like ALS that have trouble like communicating, so that they can like, communicate with other people easier. Maybe like their brain chip sends information to like a voice synthesizer or something, and they can speak easier. I mean, that's cool, I guess. But the thing that's a little bit worrying is that since, when is it? Is it like 2019? I need to look up the statistic. Neuralink has killed an estimated 1,500 animals since 2018, including sheep, pigs, and monkeys. And it's unclear exactly why so many animals have died in these Neuralink trials. There was one instance where an animal rights group called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine filed a complaint last year that accused Neuralink of botching surgeries. And their claim included that surgeons had used an unapproved glue on the skulls of monkeys, which had leaked onto the monkeys' brains and ended up killing them. If that's true, that means that these particular monkeys were killed due to incompetence, which is not reassuring for a brain chip company. The same animal rights group has also repeatedly called on Musk to release more details about experiments on monkeys that had resulted in internal bleeding, paralysis, chronic infections, seizures, declining psychological health, and death. That does seem like a lot of health problems for these monkeys. And there was also like a report in one Neuralink experiment with 23 monkeys. 5 of the monkeys had to be euthanized specifically due to device-related issues, like actual problems with the chip. It just seems like this is my point. It just seems like they're killing a lot of animals. And it's kind of like, are we sure? Are we sure we're ready to put them in human heads? I think there was like some other company that has been approved. Synchron. Synchron is a different brain chip company who in 2022 implanted a sort of chip into its first human patient. So it's not like unprecedented. This sort of chip was from Synchron, was designed to let people with paralysis operate assistive technologies using only their thoughts. So it's not like completely unprecedented that a brain chip company, I don't know if it's specifically brain chips or if it's like also medical devices. Let me look it up quick. Oh yeah, Synchron is specifically a brain chip company. So it's not like completely, unprecedented that a brain chip company is putting brain chips in actual humans, because Synchron has been doing it since 2022. But still, I'm a little bit worried. If you're the first person, if you're one of the first people in these clinical trials to get a brain chip, all I can say is that I wish you a lot of luck, and that I hope everything goes well. So before we do our last story, I just wanted to do a quick update on a story I did a few weeks ago about California's Skittles ban. A few weeks ago, it was just a bill that was passing through the California legislature. But it seems that the bill has moved forward and is now going to be signed into law pretty soon, if it hasn't already. But yeah, the legislation is meant to ban chemicals that have had some links to health risks, such as cancer, reproductive health harm, and immune system damage. For a lot of these chemicals that are being banned, a lot of the times it seems like there's at least some evidence, but it's not entirely like conclusive. But it does seem like there might be some evidence. It might be a possibility that these chemicals can cause health risks. All of the chemicals were already banned in the European Union, if that puts things into perspective. A lot of people I've heard talking about this talk about it as if it's the red dye that's in Skittles that is being banned. There is a type of dye called red dye number 3 in the bill that is being banned, but I don't think that's actually the type of dye that's used in Skittles. The reason why this would affect Skittles is because of titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide is found in Skittles to give it more of a sort of a uniform. It's like to affect the appearance of Skittles. And titanium dioxide, I think, if I remember correctly, has had some links to certain types of cancer. So they're banning titanium dioxide. Skittles, obviously, it would affect the sale of Skittles, but Skittles are just going to come out with a different recipe, right? They're not going to like stop selling Skittles in California. So the term Skittles ban is a little bit of a misnomer. Also, potassium bromate, bromated vegetable oil, and propylparaben are the other 3 chemicals that are being banned. Longtime viewers of the channel, this has been a long one. I'm trying to catch up on the news, because I haven't done a video in a while. But finally, we have reached our last article, and longtime viewers of the channel know that I like ending weird news reports on a really good, really inspiring article. And this week is no different. This article title reads, "No charges filed against man who dumped 500 pounds of pasta in New Jersey woods." This happened in Old Bridge, New Jersey. There was a mystery surrounding a trail of pasta that wounded up, I guess, it was next to a river. I guess it must have been next to like a public walking path, because residents of the town quickly were startled